I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these, but here we are. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Lisa for about 5 years now. When we first got together, I genuinely thought I'd found the one, someone who'd stick with me through thick and thin, who I could trust blindly. We had our issues, sure, but I never imagined she'd cheat on me, especially not during what was supposed to be our anniversary weekend. That was supposed to be special, a nice getaway, just us, a little celebration of years of being together and building a life. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. From the outside, Lisa always seemed confident, a little bitchy sometimes, but that was her charm. She liked to think she was smart, witty, the queen bee in her circle, and she had a way of throwing shade that I secretly found kind of attractive. Still, I always believed she loved me, or at least that's what I thought. She was the kind of woman who could lie her way out of anything, so I guess I should have seen the signs. She'd be on her phone a lot more than usual, texting. Behind my back, laughing at things I couldn't see. She'd get defensive if I asked who she was talking to. Little things that I brushed off. Maybe I was just paranoid, or maybe I was too comfortable. The first real sign that something was off happened about 2 months ago. She started coming home late more often, claiming she was working late or meeting with friends. But I noticed her phone always had a password now, which was new. She'd be extra careful to hide her screen whenever I went near her. Sometimes she'd accidentally leave her phone lying around, and I'd catch a glimpse of messages that made my stomach knot up. Flirty stuff, too provocative to ignore, texts about what they did last night, how much she loved the sex with him, how excited she was to see him again. I couldn't believe it. I felt sick. One night I was going through her things. No, I know that's invasive, but I couldn't help myself. I was desperate for answers. Her phone was unlocked, and I saw the messages pop up in her inbox. Can't wait to see you tonight. Thinking about last time, your touch drives me crazy. The worst part, the name attached was Jake, my best friend, the guy I'd trusted more than anyone. I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling, like I'd been hit with a sledgehammer. How the hell could she do this during our anniversary weekend? Had I been that blind? Had I missed all the signs? I didn't sleep that night. I stared at those messages for hours, trying to make sense of it all. I kept telling myself it was just sex, just some stupid fling she was having on the side. But deep down, I knew better. I knew she'd lied about everything, about her late nights, about her friends, about the seemingly innocent trips to the store when she was really meeting Jake. I was so furious, yet numb. How could she betray me like this, right when I thought everything was perfect? I kept thinking about all the times I'd trusted her, shared my thoughts, my hopes, my fears. All of it thrown away in a matter of weeks, maybe even days. The thing is, Lisa has always been someone who loves to lie and manipulate. She's the type who can spin a story so well you almost believe it yourself. When I confronted her the next morning, she acted like I was crazy, like I was imagining everything. "Mike, you're losing it," she said, with that bitchy smile and a tone that made my blood boil. "You're just jealous because I'm working late or I want to have fun. You're so paranoid. Jake is just a friend, I swear, you're overreacting." But I knew better. I wasn't overreacting. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The betrayal was so raw, so real, that I couldn't even argue with her. Part of me wanted to shout, to call her out on her lies. But another part, the part that had loved her for so long, just shut down. I looked into her eyes and saw the same coldness I'd been suspecting. She lied right to my face, spinning her web of stories, and I knew I had to decide what to do next. How do you move on from something like that? How do you even look in her eyes again? After she walked out of the house that morning, I stayed there, staring at the door like it was going to tell me the answers I desperately needed. I kept replaying the confrontation in my head, the way she dismissed everything, the way she called me crazy for even suspecting her. That bitchy smirk she threw over her shoulder. That was the moment I realized I was dealing with someone who loved to lie, someone who could manipulate her way out of anything. And Jake, my best friend. How had I missed all the signs, all the little hints I'd ignored because I wanted to believe in her, in us? I knew the first thing I had to do was get some clarity. I couldn't just sit there and stew in my own anger. I needed to see for myself if those messages were real. I couldn't trust her word anymore. I'd been played. So I did what I should have done from the start. I looked through her phone again, this time more thoroughly. I needed to find out exactly what was going on, all the details. And what I found was worse than I expected. Her messages with Jake weren't just some casual flirting. They were heated, explicit at times. They talked about their sex life, how desperately they wanted each other, what they did during their secret meetups. I found pictures she sent him, half-naked, provocative, the kind of stuff that made my stomach churn. The worst part, she lied about everything. All those times she said she was working late or at a meeting or just out with friends. She was with him, sneaking around behind my back. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. How could she do this to me, to us? I'd never been the perfect husband, but I'd never deserved this kind of betrayal. That night I couldn't sleep either. My mind was racing, trying to process the betrayal. Part of me wanted to confront her again, but I knew I needed a plan. I couldn't just explode and yell. I had to be smart. I had to think about what I wanted, about whether I even wanted to save this marriage at this point. The thought of her lying, cheating, and sneaking around with Jake made my stomach turn, but I also knew I couldn't just walk away without understanding what this was all about. The next day, I decided to meet with my lawyer. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but I needed to know my options. My mind kept circling back to the fact that she was the one who cheated, and Jake, my so-called best friend, was right in the middle of it. I felt so betrayed, so stupid for trusting her. How could I have been so blind? Was I just a safe option for her when she got bored, or was she genuinely unhappy and just too cowardly to tell me? I couldn't get the images of her and Jake out of my head. The thought of them, her lying there naked with him, as if I never mattered, was like a punch in the gut. I also started reflecting on all the moments I thought were normal, the times I brushed off her coldness, the times she dismissed my feelings with a snide comment or a bitchy remark. I began questioning everything. Had I ever truly known her, or was she just good at hiding her real self? I knew I'd have to confront her again soon, but I wasn't ready yet. I needed more answers, more clarity. The silence from her side was deafening, each hour feeling like a slow torture. I remember sitting there, feeling numb, the weight of all this crashing down on me. I was angry at her, furious at Jake, and hurt beyond words. I'd loved her, trusted her, and in the span of a few messages that trust had evaporated. I kept thinking about all the plans we'd made, all the future talk, how she'd look me in the eye and lie so effortlessly. It was a strange, suffocating feeling, being so betrayed by someone you loved so much. I kept asking myself, was I ever enough for her? Or was I just convenient? Those questions haunted me, and I knew I'd have to find a way to move forward. The only thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. The confrontation I'd been dreading finally came sooner than I expected. I couldn't keep pretending I was okay, not after what I'd uncovered. I called her that evening, voice steady but cold, and told her I needed to talk face to face. When she showed up, her usual bitchy attitude was there, but there was a nervous edge to her eyes, like she knew she was about to get caught in her lies again. We sat in the living room, tense and silent for a few moments. Then I just laid it out, everything I found, the messages, the photos, the lies. I watched her face twist and contort, trying to deny it, trying to spin some bullshit story that made her look innocent. "Oh, come on, Mike. You're blowing things out of proportion," she said, scoffing. "That's just Jake. We're just friends. It doesn't mean anything." That was her go-to line, her favorite way to dismiss the truth. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I knew about the sex, about how they'd been sneaking around, how I'd seen the messages, the pictures. Her face turned red with a mix of anger and guilt. "You don't understand, it's not what you think," she started, but I cut her off. "No, Lisa, you don't get to lie your way out of this. How long has this been going on? Since when were you hiding this from me?" Her eyes flickered, and she tried to brush it off, saying it was just a mistake, that she was bored, that Jake was just someone she was having sex with. Just sex, she kept saying, like that made it okay. The thing that struck me most was how she twisted everything. She threw it all back on me, saying I wasn't enough anymore, that I was neglectful, that she was just looking for some excitement. "You're so boring, Mike," she snapped. "Maybe if you gave me what I needed, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." It was classic Lisa, blame shifting, deflecting, making herself the victim even when she was the one who cheated. I felt like I was losing my mind. How could she be so cold? How could she lie so effortlessly? I was furious but also broken. I loved her so much and I couldn't believe she'd do this to me, especially during what was supposed to be a special weekend. I wanted to shake her, tell her how much she'd hurt me, but I kept my cool. I just looked at her and said, "You're done. I want you gone. I can't look at you the same anymore." Her eyes flashed with anger, but she didn't argue. Instead, she stood up and stormed out, muttering some bullshit about how she deserved better. How she was tired of my accusations. That moment I realized she didn't care about how much she'd hurt me. She only cared about saving her own ass. That night I couldn't sleep again. The betrayal felt like a punch to the chest, and I kept going over everything she said, her lies, her excuses, how she tried to make me the bad guy. I remember feeling such a deep, gnawing sadness. I'd given her my trust, my love, my everything, and she'd thrown it all away for some stupid affair. For Jake, her supposed best friend, I kept asking myself if I ever really knew her at all, if I'd missed all the signs, or if I'd been just another mark in her game. The pain was overwhelming, but I also knew I had to start thinking about what came next. I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. I had to make a choice. The days that followed were a blur of heartbreak, anger, and confusion. I kept replaying everything, trying to understand how someone I loved so deeply could do this to me. Part of me wanted to confront Jake, to cuss him out and tell him how much he'd betrayed me too, but I knew that wouldn't change anything. Deep down, I understood that the damage was done. Lisa had made her choice. She was the one who crossed a line I could never forgive, and now I had to decide what I was going to do with my life. Whether I was going to fight for her, or finally accept that it was over. All I knew was that I never saw this coming, and it was the biggest betrayal I'd ever experienced. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, disbelief, and a strange sense of numbness that wouldn't go away. I tried to focus on work, on anything that would distract me from the chaos in my mind. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that bitchy smirk, the look in her eyes when she lied to my face. I couldn't escape it. Every night I lay awake replaying everything, wondering how I missed the signs, wondering if I should have seen it coming. The hardest part was dealing with the fact that she was still in my house, still pretending to be the wife I thought I knew. She kept trying to come around, acting like everything was fine, like she was the victim. She even had the nerve to tell me she loved me. Yeah, right, like that made it all better. It only made me more resentful. The more she played her games, the more I realized I couldn't trust a word she said anymore. Every apology, every tear she pretended to shed sounded hollow. She was manipulative as hell, and I'd been blind to it for so long. One night I snapped. I called her out on her bullshit and told her she needed to leave. I couldn't handle her anymore, not with her acting like she still belonged here, like I was supposed to accept her betrayal. She argued, threw a fit, called me crazy, said I was overreacting. But I was done listening. I told her if she wanted to stay, she had to accept that I knew everything, that I wouldn't be fooled again. That's when she finally lost her cool, stormed into the bedroom and screamed at me, calling me all sorts of names. That bitchy attitude of hers showed again. She was so used to getting her way, even when caught red-handed. I remember standing there, feeling a mix of rage and heartbreak, realizing I was finally at my breaking point. I told her she could pack her things and get out, and she did, but not before throwing some last digs, saying I was insecure, that I was the problem, not her. Yeah, she's a master at flipping the script. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. I just wanted her gone. Whatever she thought she could say to make herself feel better, I didn't care. I was sick of her lies, her manipulations, her bitchy attitude that she'd always used to get her way. That night I slept on the couch, trying to get some distance from her, from the mess she'd made of my life. I kept thinking about everything: the trust I'd lost, the love I'd poured into her, and how she'd discarded it all for a quick thrill with Jake. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever recover from it. For the first time in years, I felt completely lost. I had no idea what to do or who I was anymore. All I knew was, I couldn't keep living in the same house with her, not after what she did. I felt like I was walking around in a fog, trying to piece my life back together, but knowing it would never be the same. The most painful realization was that she didn't seem to care about the damage she'd caused. She kept acting like she was the victim, like I was the one overreacting. That's what really tore me apart. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was just a manipulative liar. And Jake, my so-called best friend, was just as bad. I wondered how I'd ever trusted either of them. How had I been so blind? I'd given her everything and she'd thrown it all away for sex and some meaningless affair. I kept asking myself if I'd ever really known her, or if I'd just been fooling myself into thinking I did. Now I sit here trying to figure out what's next. Do I try to fix this mess? Do I cut her out of my life completely? Honestly, I'm leaning toward cutting her loose. I don't think I can rebuild what's broken, not after this. But that doesn't mean it's easy. Not by a long shot. I still feel the ache of betrayal deep in my chest, and I don't know if I'll ever fully get over it. All I know is I learned something harsh. You can't trust everyone, even the ones closest to you. And sometimes the ones you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. The days turned into weeks, and I found myself in a strange limbo. I'd kicked her out, but the pain and anger still gnawed at me constantly. Sometimes I'd catch myself reminiscing about the good times, the moments I thought were real. It's funny how the mind works. One day you're in love and the next you're questioning everything, wondering if you ever really knew the person you vowed to spend your life with. I kept thinking about the lie she told herself, about how she always played the victim when she got caught. Honestly, it made me sick. Part of me kept asking what I could have done differently, why I was so blind to her manipulations. But deep down, I knew it wasn't my fault. It was her choice, her betrayal. I'd loved her, trusted her, and she'd thrown it all away for some slutty sex with Jake. Sometimes I'd see her face in my dreams, her bitchy smirk, her sharp tongue, the way she lied so easily. It all felt like a punch to the gut every single time. There were moments I'd want to call her, to hear her voice just to remind myself how much she'd hurt me, but I held back. I knew that wouldn't do any good anymore. I started hanging out with a few close friends, people who knew the kind of woman Lisa was, who had warned me from the start. They told me to move on, to forget about her and focus on myself. I didn't want to hear that at first. I was so angry, so broken that I couldn't even see straight. But eventually I realized they were right. Staying stuck in this hurt wasn't going to bring her back or undo what she'd done. It was only making me bitter and miserable. There was one night I finally broke down, sitting alone in my apartment, tears pouring down my face. I couldn't understand how someone I loved so much could turn into this lying, manipulative bitch. I replayed every moment, every sign I'd ignored, every time I'd forgiven her even when I should have seen the truth. It felt like my heart had been shattered into a million pieces. I hated her for what she did, hated Jake even more for being such a disloyal friend. That betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever recover. But I also knew I had to start rebuilding myself. I realized I'd been so focused on her that I'd lost sight of who I was. I started working out more, trying to get my head clear, and I even talked to a counselor. Slowly, I began to accept that this was the end of the line for us. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to face the fact that I deserved better than someone who cheated and lied relentlessly. I had to start putting myself first, no matter how much it hurt. In the end, I learned that betrayal cuts to your core, and trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. I'd always believed in loyalty, in honesty, but now I see how fragile those things are. Lisa's actions showed me that some people are just good at hiding their true selves, and you can't always see what's coming. I've come to accept that I might never fully trust again, but I also know I'll survive. I'll come out of this a little wiser, a little stronger, and next time I'll be more careful about who I let into my life, because some betrayals are so deep they change everything forever. Now, looking back, I realize I've learned a lot from this whole nightmare. Trust is fragile, and it doesn't take much to shatter it completely. I thought I knew Lisa, thought I had her figured out, and then she proved me wrong in the worst way possible. The betrayal hurt so badly I questioned everything I ever believed about her, about us. But somehow I'm starting to see it as a lesson. A brutal, painful lesson, but one I had to learn. I've come to understand that sometimes people hide their true selves behind a mask, smiling, lying, pretending to be something they're not. Lisa was good at it. She was manipulative, bitchy, and selfish. She lied her way through every excuse, every justification she threw at me. And Jake, he's just as bad, maybe worse, because he was supposed to be my friend. That kind of betrayal is almost worse than her cheating itself, because it's the ultimate backstab. The thing that stings most now is how much I loved her. I loved her so much that I ignored all the little signs of her lies. I wanted to believe in us in the future we'd planned. But in the end, I was just fooling myself. She didn't love me enough to be honest. She loved her own lies more. And Jake, my supposed best friend, was right there, part of the lies, part of the betrayal. It's hard to accept that I was that blind, that I trusted them so blindly. But I also realize that I can't keep carrying this pain forever. I have to let go, cut the ties, and move on. It's not easy. Hell, it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But I refuse to be a victim of her lies anymore. I refuse to let her define my happiness or my future. I'm going to rebuild my life piece by piece, even if it's painful. Because I know now that I deserve honesty, loyalty, respect, something she and Jake never gave me. So here I am, finally ready to close this chapter. I've learned that some betrayals are so deep that they change your entire outlook on life. But I've also learned that pain can make you stronger if you let it. I might have lost her, I might have lost trust in some people, but I still have myself. And that's enough to start over, to heal, to find happiness again, even if it's different from what I imagined. I just hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar knows. Trust your instincts, don't ignore the signs, and most importantly, never let someone steal your peace. Because in the end, your happiness is the only thing that really matters.